with the World Alliance of International Financial Centers. You might ask yourself, what is the World Alliance? We organize a collaboration between financial centers. To make it clear, let me briefly state what I mean when I mention financial centers. So what we have in mind when we hear about financial centers are usually high-rises of banks here in Tokyo, in New York, in London, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in many other places. But financial centers are much more than banks and they are high-rises. Of course, there are FinTech companies, there are startups. There are also, if we talk about topics, insurance companies, or in the FinTech world, insurtechs. There are asset managers, there are payment companies. Besides the startups, there are also regulators, central banks, they're also part of the financial centers. And let's not forget universities, talent development. We need talent for startups, for the banks, hopefully for the banks to innovate in a better way. So all this together, it's a cluster. It's still a physical place, usually all sitting together. We can also have a discussion, if this is of interest, whether this will become more and more virtual in the coming decades. It's also an interesting question. We see some cases where, let's say, non-traditional financial centers have developed to become a financial center. You might look, if you're familiar with mainland China, at Hangzhou, where Ant Financial, Alibaba, is headquartered. If you're familiar with Germany, you might look at Berlin, which is the capital of Germany. You will not find any headquarters of banks there, but a lot of FinTech companies. I'll come to this a little bit later. So we have new kinds of financial centers. This is to give you an idea what I mean with financial centers. The World Alliance, we are a non-profit association. We are registered in Brussels and Belgium. And our members are city governments, public-private partnerships representing the government and the financial industry and similar institutions. And you see our members, it's a combination of, on one hand, large financial centers. You see there's London, there's Hong Kong, and also Tokyo. We are here in Tokyo as some examples of top 5 financial centers internationally. But you also see some names of smaller financial centers. So they all work together. It's about collaboration, it's about running projects together. Many people ask me frequently, they say, we thought, the financial centers, they compete. This is also true. But there's this famous word of competition, cooperation and competition, which is very important in many industries, and this is also the case in the for the financial centers. Yes, regionally, financial centers compete. Here, Tokyo compete with Hong Kong, with Singapore, with other places. It's usually regionally, so Tokyo, to a lesser extent, maybe compete with Paris or with Frankfurt, with European financial centers. It's rather a cooperation. But for many topics, financial centers can cooperate because topics like FinTech, like sustainable finance, this is on the agenda of all the financial centers, and we need to achieve global scale for the FinTechs. We need to achieve harmonization for sustainable finance. For instance, on that question, what is green, which is a very interesting one. Also happy to take question on this later if you're interested in this. So these are topics where we need to cooperate. And these days, facing the crisis from the coronavirus, of course, also financial centers need to cooperate. So, we cannot differentiate in the coronavirus. It's affecting all of us, and the financial centers need to compete and need to explain to the general public how they can, perform the transmission mechanism between, on one hand, the government and the central banks, putting a lot of money into bonds, basically, into the financial sector. You have heard maybe about the Fed, you have heard about the European Central Bank, I think 850 billion, 750 billion both putting into the financial sector, but how does this money ends up to small and medium-sized companies, or maybe even at freelancers, so people affected by this crisis. So this is something the financial sector needs to handle, and this is something where we need financial centers and where we also need to communicate together. So to give you a little bit of an idea what we are doing, this is on a geographical basis. You see we still have white spots because we are a young organization. The World Alliance exists for 2 years. We've founded it with 11 members in 2018. After 3 years of preparation, you can imagine it's not easy to get 11 members going together to a notary in Brussels and signing paperwork. This was a bit of trouble, so required some preparation. Now we are 60, and we will soon hopefully be 70. We already have application on the table from further financial centers. You might ask yourself, well, there's something missing here.
Yeah,
this area.
That's okay.
No, it's not okay. But we have a little bit of trouble with New York City because there's not a single institution representing New York City as a financial center. We talked with the city government, they said, no, financial industry, financial center, this is not our business. And then we talked with NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange, but also cannot really fit. So we haven't found the right partner yet in New York. But if you focus on the US, we have very good conversation with Boston, with the mayor's office. Hopefully they will join, which would be a nice fit to us. We should not forget there's more than one financial center in the US, and at least we have the Canadians with Toronto as a member. And let me say a few nice words about Toronto. One of the places where the financial industry, in particular the banks, really came very well out of the financial crisis. And if you're in FinTech, and I guess some of you are in FinTech attending this meeting, Toronto is a very excellent place. I was there with a World Alliance delegation last autumn, and it's very impressive what they have set up in terms of incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, also innovation hubs of the banks. It's not only innovation theater they're doing, but there's really very interesting things going on. I've mentioned already, we are a non-profit association. This is not so much important. So we promote the international financial centers on a global basis. We run projects together. I've mentioned this already. So all our members, they can decide, they can propose new projects and can decide whether they want to join. Interestingly, for the first projects, everybody decided to join, but we also will have projects in the future which are maybe interesting only for a subset of our members. We're discussing, for instance, maritime finance, but not all our members, not all financial centers have a harbor connected to it. Some have. So this is maybe something which is only interesting for a subset. Whatever is interesting for our members, we try to organize a project and organize the exchange of best practice. So you've seen the members already. Let me very quickly run through them, but I don't want to spend too much time explaining in detail what they're doing. Abu Dhabi Global Market in the United Arab Emirates, quite new financial center, but very ambitious. Whoever has been to the GCC, to the Gulf, to the Middle East, know Abu Dhabi has a lot of capital, not only high net worth individuals, but also sovereign wealth funds, and they're investing a lot. And Abu Dhabi, they want to develop to a second Switzerland, also for private wealth management, asset management. So this is one of our members. Belgium Finance Center, also one of our members, a smaller financial center, but at the European capital. And then we have Busan. This is one of the candidates for maritime financing, the second largest Korean city, with 5.5 million people. Also a lot doing in FinTech there. A little bit in the shadow of Seoul, but nevertheless very, very ambitious to do a lot. And Casablanca Finance City. I guess not, maybe most of you are not familiar with Casablanca, so let me spend a few more words on this. Casablanca is the capital, or not maybe the financial capital, let me put it that way, of Morocco. This is Northern Africa, so the Arabic part of Africa. And if you go there, this is like Dubai 20 years ago. I had the pleasure to be in Dubai 20 years ago when they were just starting the Dubai International Financial Center, which is now, I think, number 7 in the world in terms of financial centers. And at the time, everybody was smiling, laughing a little bit, saying, "Oh, what you're doing there in the middle of the desert, a lot of high rises, and now you also want to do a financial center. Okay, maybe the hotel, the Burj Al Arab, okay, we buy, some people will go there, but a financial center cannot work here." They proved differently, and they're doing very well. And in Casablanca, it looks the same. They have a nice area, they have the first high rises, and Africa, if you have a long-term view, definitely will be a success story, and they are well positioned with agreements with other regulatory authorities in Africa. So they have a sound basis to develop. Qatar, maybe a similar case like Abu Dhabi. Let me skip this, it's very interesting, but to speed up a little bit and have more time to other topics. We have Frankfurt, Germany, the leading financial center in Germany among our members. Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, it's a Financial Services Development Council. This is kind of agency or council of the Hong Kong government, which steers the Hong Kong Financial Center. They have a quite interesting setup in that council with a combination of ministers, state secretaries on one hand, but the CEOs of the leading banks in Hong Kong and of the stock exchange being there. And a lot of experience with SARS, like here in Japan, so also with the coronavirus, so they can be helpful with this topic. And then the City UK, representing London as a financial center. In the UK, the financial industry is very important. They employ more than 2 million people in the broader financial sector. They currently face the Brexit, which came into effect end of January. There's still the grace period until the year end. But the future relationships between the EU 27 and the UK is at stake in times where the coronavirus put us all in a crisis. Quite interesting situation. And then Luxembourg, very famous for asset management in Europe. Moscow as an international financial center, a little bit suffering from international sanctions, but also maybe a comeback story in the next decade. And a smaller one, Oman, also in the Middle East. We have in Kazakhstan the Astana International Financial Center. Maybe also some of you are not so much familiar with this. They're going to benefit from the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, because the land way to Europe, you need to pass Kazakhstan. There's no way to go around Kazakhstan. It's quite big, a very huge country, rich in natural resources. So they want to benefit from this. And then we have Paris. We will meet in mid of May in Paris if the coronavirus allows, or maybe not. And we have Mauritius, offshore hub for Africa. And we have FinCity Tokyo since beginning of this month. We are very happy on this. And Toronto, I already said a bit about Toronto. These are the projects we are doing. I will focus myself on what we do in the FinTech initiative in the coming 2-3 minutes, but just to give you an idea what are the other topics we have on the agenda. In the FinTech initiative, I don't want to bore you a little bit with what's happening in FinTech in bringing innovation into the financial sector. You're probably or very likely familiar with this, and I want to show you a little bit what we have done last year. This year, of course, we also face a little bit of a disruption when it comes to physical meetings, but we met 24th of October last year in Abu Dhabi for the Abu Dhabi FinTech Festival, which was very impressive. They organized a competition. They went to various places. I'm not sure whether they went to Tokyo as well, and had a selection round, let's say pre-competition, I think in something like 15 cities. And then the final was in Abu Dhabi in October. Was highly interesting to see all the fintechs from all over the world. And we discussed whether such competitions can help fintech companies to go global, to expand. Before we were in Toronto, I've mentioned this already, we went to the ecosystem in Toronto. If you ever have the opportunity to go to Toronto, please visit the fintech spaces there. In particular, I was impressed by Mars Discovery District. Mars Discovery District is the innovation hub of the city government in the former hospital. In that hospital, more than 100 years ago, insulin was invented, and they've changed it to an innovation hub, and it's a cross-vertical innovation hub. You also find there medtech, biotech companies, many more, and this interaction, I think most of us maybe can agree, is very important. Having the other verticals as well, and having the founders, giving them the opportunity to meet and to discuss ideas. Then we also met in Kazakhstan on talent development. I've said already, there's a lot of work there, the Chinese are involved, but this is the financial center or fintech ecosystem which is just at the beginning, and then talent development is even more important than for the established one. So how can universities, educate people, teach students, which then later maybe enter fintech companies or even found fintech companies. This is something which kept us busy in Kazakhstan. We were in May last year at the Side Business School at the University of Oxford, and we discussed fintech ecosystem building. So what are the ingredients in general you need in fintech ecosystem? There's a lot of research, not only in Oxford on this. Many people met from various countries, from the US, from European countries and so on, to discuss this. And also here, the researchers said, number one is talent development. Of course, much more is needed, government action, financing, and so on, but talent development is the most important factor. And we also met in Casablanca. So what you can take from these pictures is our focus is on exchanging best practice. Letting the fintech experts from our members meet and discuss, let them explain the different approaches, and then the other members can learn from it, maybe take the parts they like, leave the parts they don't think can fit into their ecosystem. It's a very small thing, just having the exchange of best practice, but it's on the other hand something which also led to inviting each other to the fintech events, spreading the news, and also making it easier for fintech companies to go from one of our members to another member. So this interaction we also of course want to foster. Yeah, so much to the World Alliance. As I said, we hope to meet in Paris. We will meet then in Doha in October, if the coronavirus permits, for our annual general meeting. I hope many colleagues can come. And if I still have 2 minutes, I would like to use the last 2 minutes to talk a little bit about Europe, Germany and Frankfurt. You will see another logo. It's on the upper right, FinTech Consult. FinTech Consult is another topic I'm involved. It's a network. It's not a legal entity. It's a network of FinTech experts from different cities in Europe and in Asia. And all of the partners in that network are either FinTech founders themselves or running accelerator programs and so on. And we started FinTech Consult 4 years ago because we all had the same experience. Maybe you have seen also experiences. If you're in FinTech, many people will come to you and have questions like, how can I enter FinTech? Maybe somebody coming from the bank needs your advice, and then or saying, you have established your business in Singapore. How have you done this? I also want to go to Singapore. How to do? Or you have just got a license from the regulator for payments. What do I need to do? And what is the right law firm to work with? And we said at that time, because it was just too much, we said, let's not only doing this on a case-by-case basis or restricting it to friends, but put a little bit of a price tag to it. Not that this is a big business for all of us, but make a service out of it. And for the FinTech companies who needs our help, maybe then we become some sort of mentor to them. They pay a little bit, and then it's fun. Oh, somebody said something? Yeah. So this is the idea of FinTech Consult. Not a big deal. As promised, a few words on Europe. Let me start with Europe, and let me start, for those of you who are not familiar with the European landscape, talk a little bit about some of the European unicorns in FinTech. I thought what I can explain to you, I think this evening, make it very brief. There's so much to talk about, right? So we can talk about regulation and what the European Union is doing. We can talk about different verticals in FinTech and so on. But I thought maybe it's most interesting to talk a little bit about the unicorns. We have Klarna. Who of you has heard about Klarna? Norbert, you're nodding. Okay, another one. Klarna handles payments in e-commerce, so mainly online payments. They also do a little bit point of sales. And as you can see, they've quite get some part of the business of the European e-commerce business. Founded 15 years ago, it's a Swedish company. They have a banking license, and meanwhile 2,500 employees. Nice valuation, and this is even the valuation from last year of 5.5 billion. They're not public yet, so I think probably an IPO would bring them almost to a double-digit billion valuation. Quite recently, 2 weeks ago, Ant Financial also invested in them. So this is quite an interesting company. And their competitor directly next to it, Aiden, so founded in 2006. It's a Dutch FinTech company. They are even listed at Euronext in Paris. They also do online and point of sales transaction with a little bit less employees, roughly the same revenues. And as they are listed already, they have a market cap of 22 billion. Quite sizable business. Also in Europe, there are sizable FinTech companies, not only in China and in Asia. They differ a little bit in their approach, whether more focusing on the larger e-commerce shops or more on the smaller ones. But other than that, they are quite comparable. Transfer-wise, getting more and more active also in Asia. UK-based money transfer services. Also almost 2,000 employees, 5 million clients, and very big assets for those of us who sometimes have to transfer money from Asia to Europe and vice versa, and do not want to pay always, I don't know how much here in yen, but in Europe I would say 30 euros. This hurts, and transfer-wise, it's one of the players making this much cheaper, and also achieved a nice valuation. Funding circle, they just unfortunately moved out of Germany due to the coronavirus, UK-based. Peer-to-peer lending is their focus. And Revolut, one of the European mobile banks, founded 7 years ago in the UK. Still, in terms of revenues, much smaller like the payment businesses, but 10 million users and also a valuation of almost 2 billion. And Oak North, they focus on SME lending, while Funding Circle more on, is B2C oriented. Oak North do SME lending with a UK banking license and almost 3 billion valuation. No German one here. This has a reason, because the German ones come separately. And more companies will become unicorns on the way. These are the German ones. Also here we have a few more which has just achieved unicorn status. But let me focus on the largest one. Wirecard, they made it a little bit to the news in the last 6 months due to some accounting issues, for instance in Singapore and in Dubai. I think they have almost sorted it out. But anyway, their market cap came a little bit down. They were at 20 billion, now they're at 12 billion. This is from yesterday, quite actual figure. They cooperate very well with Alipay. And if the Chinese shopper come to Germany, come to Europe and want to pay with Alipay in the shops of the top brands in Frankfurt, in Berlin or in Paris, then this is Wirecard behind, making this possible. Founded already 20 years ago. They also had a nice story at the beginning, because they were the first payment company addressing maybe a little bit the gray side of the e-commerce industry, gambling and other businesses where banks at that time didn't want to deal with. They made the business, of course all legal business, but nevertheless. At the beginning, of course, need to deal with money laundering and that kind of things. But this is now a very tiny part of their business. They're also covering e-commerce. Check24, another German company. This is something where you can discuss or argue, is it a FinTech or what is it? We call it a platform for financial services. Or comparison platform. They offer all kinds of financial services and always give you different choices, and then making commissions, out of these postings, right? So you're looking for a new life insurance. They have 10 offers for you, and maybe also offering discounts. They compare very nicely the different features, and then give you information about the price. And then you say, oh, the second one, this is the one I want to go for, and then they also handle the application process for you, make everything very convenient, give you some bonus points for using their services. And you see, they've grown very nicely with 500 million revenues in 2015 already. They're a private company, there are no newer figures. They don't disclose very much, but have in Germany 50 million customers. So I think most of the Germans have used them in one way or the other. And then we talked about Revolut before, N26. This is a German mobile bank, mobile-only bank, founded 7 years ago, still a private company, 5 million clients, expanding to other European countries as well as to the US. And last year achieved a valuation of 3.5 billion, and maybe in the meantime even higher. So I think it's a quite good success story. They managed to keep their customer acquisition costs quite low, and also the churn rates. So they focus very much on these kind of KPIs. And they're in particular liked by the generation maybe between 18 and 30. While also, older people like me have an account with them, maybe not their main account, but so I think if you're just opening your first bank account, maybe you need your first account with 18 or whatever, or with 16. So normally in Germany you don't go to a classical bank anymore. If your parents will not push you to go to, let's say, Deutsche or something and say, oh, we give you the first 500 euros if you go to Deutsche, I think they will rather go to N26 and those players, because this is easy on a mobile phone. You can do your account opening within minutes by video authentication, so young people do not like to go to banks anymore. And if I think myself, if I don't count the business meetings privately, I can only remember one time I was in a bank branch in the last 10 years, and so I think this is something N26 is working on. By the way, I'm not familiar with the situation here in Japan, but I'm very familiar with the situation in Hong Kong. They have now the virtual banks, Singapore as well, and I think this will also be a success story. I think this is my last slide. No, I think I still have one. So this is the last slide. A lot of text, sorry for that. I will summarize for you. It's a little bit of an overview what's happening in Germany in general. FinTech in Germany is, this is maybe important for you to remember, is decentralized. Not decentralized in the sense of blockchain and DeFi, but decentralized in the sense of it's everywhere. There's not the single place where all the FinTech companies are. You find them in Berlin, you find them in Frankfurt, in Munich, in Hamburg. Germany always is has a distributed nature. We don't have that single hub. We have the different functions distributed across different capitals, different cities in Germany, and for the FinTechs it's the same. In Frankfurt you find mainly B2B FinTechs, in particular the ones working with the banking sector, like RegTechs and others. In Berlin you find B2C FinTechs, because FinTech in Berlin developed out of e-commerce. This is the old story. E-commerce started between 2005 and 2010, and then there was a need for efficient payment solution, and then we had the first payment FinTech companies. So if you look at the German landscape, many FinTechs are now in the scale-up phase. So the peak of the FinTechs was something like 2015, where a lot of new FinTechs were founded. They're now 5 years old or older, and now they're scaling up, at least the successful ones. Last year, 3 billion euros were invested in German FinTechs in terms of VC. There's also official hub strategy of the German government, not only related to FinTech, but also to biotech, IoT, and many other things. And Berlin and Frankfurt are the official FinTech hubs of Germany. So Frankfurt is the place to meet and to enter Germany for a lot of international FinTech companies. We see also a lot of FinTech companies from Asia, to a lesser extent from Japan, I have to admit, but from Hong Kong, from Singapore, from China, from Korea. They come to Frankfurt and they start exploring the European markets there. In Frankfurt, there's also a lot going on in cybersecurity. It's a German cybersecurity hub, and this is an area very close to FinTech, where lots is happening. It's a very strong internet hub. Also in Frankfurt, D6 is the internet node with the highest traffic worldwide. The core topics you see in Frankfurt are open banking and RegTech, given the banking background. There's a new regulation in the European Union called PSD2, Payment Service Directive number 2, which requires open banking. So the banks have to offer an API for the FinTech companies. And of course, this is a matter of debate and what is in that API, what the banks have to offer in terms of data points. And last but not least, other topics we have is artificial intelligence and finance. For those of you who do not like the word artificial intelligence, let's put it that way, machine learning and big data in finance, blockchain, and also green and sustainable FinTech. So FinTechs which help to work on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, for instance. This is typical. We have started, and let me close on this, also to discuss the ethics of artificial intelligence in finance. If you look into this, there are a lot of opportunities of artificial intelligence in finance, taking away from the normal people the burden to deal with financial services. If you are part of the financial industry, of course, you may be familiar and you like to deal with financial services, but at least in Germany, my feeling is 90% of the people would rather go to the dentist than dealing with financial services, doing their investments for pension age and so on. They're very lazy and don't like it, and maybe smart applications, personal finance planner or similar application can take away that burden. This is something which is an opportunity, but of course it comes with risk. Risk in terms of scoring and using data points which are not allowed to directly be used for scoring, like health data. In Germany, in the European Union, you cannot use health data, maybe from the health insurance, maybe to deny credit applications, loan applications. But what if you can use machine learning, maybe find out from your e-commerce activities what you buy at Amazon or other e-commerce players, and then find out, oh, this person most likely has a big health issue, maybe I shouldn't give out the loan. So is that allowed? Should that be prohibited? These are interesting questions, ethical questions the society needs to decide. It's not a technical question, and also this discussion has started, and let's see where we will end up here. On that note, I would like to end. Very happy to take any questions you might have on all the topics I've mentioned, and yeah, thank you for coming. It was my pleasure talking to you, explaining a little bit what's happening in the World Alliance, in Germany, in Europe, in Frankfurt, and yeah, happy to learn a little bit more what's happening here. Thank you very much.